Make a splash this summer with Marana Parks and Recreation at any of our 3 aquatic facilities. Marana Pool is open Monday through Thursday from noon to 4 p.m. and Friday through Sunday from noon to 5 p.m. You can even check out our 2 community splash pads open daily from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. Admission is free. Visit maranaaz.gov/aquatics for locations. We'll see you there.
Do you have a favorite place to eat in Marana? I know I do. We'd love to have you tell us about that place and nominate them for the Taste of Marana Standout Award. This Discover Marana program shines a spotlight on the great food businesses in Marana that make our community a better place and more attractive to tourists. We hope you'll join us in making this program a success and spreading the word about the amazing food businesses in Marana and nominate today. Head to discovermarana.org and search Taste of Marana for a link to the nomination form and to read about the previous winners.
Welcome to Real Talk with the Town, where I sit down with the Marana staff to answer your burning questions about our beautiful community. My name is Terry Rozema, and I'm the town manager for the town, so let's get started. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk with the Town. My name is Terry, and I am your host. And today, man, did our listeners listen to us and respond with questions? Because we were running low on questions. Am I right, Vic? Yeah, Vic's over here saying, hey, we need more questions from the community. We put out a call for more questions, and man, did we get them. We got a lot of them about apartments, and so who better to have here in the studio to talk to us about apartments, than Jason from Development Services and Jane, our town attorney. Guys, say hello to all of our listeners.
Good morning. Thanks, Terry.
Hello.
All right. And so to kind of kick things off, since we're getting into summer, and a lot of times during the summer, people take vacations. So let's start with Jane. Jane, you got any big vacations on the horizon?
I do. Probably the biggest vacation I've ever taken, to be honest. I'm going to Iceland for 2 weeks in July. The middle of July.
Whoa! What's the temperatures in Iceland in July? Do you have any idea?
Yes.
Yeah.
It is their warm time of year, but the high temperatures will be in the 50s.
Well, there you have it. So what prompted this desire to go to Iceland? It's not a place that you hear a lot of people say, hey, I'm going to Iceland. You hear people saying, going to Hawaii, I'm going to Italy, I'm going to Scotland, but Iceland.
It was, we were invited, my husband and I were invited by his brother and his wife, and they were going to go whether we went or not, and we thought, okay, we'll tag along.
All right. So. Outstanding. Well, I hear it's beautiful there, so I am looking forward to seeing some pictures and hearing the stories. Yeah. Yes. So, Jason, how about you? Anything?
Nowhere near as exciting as Iceland. We're going to spend 10 days catching mosquitoes in Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, Iceland, kind of the same thing.
Similar.
This is similar, very similar.
Yeah.
Well, that's good because you're going back home. Family is always an awesome thing.
Yeah. Going back home, spend time with family, celebrate my son's graduation from high school.
Nice.
So doing a little party back there.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, let's jump into this topic here because it's a topic that some people seem to be very passionate about, even on the verge of dare I say, angry. And it deals with apartments. And we have a lot of apartment complexes going up in our community right now. Jason, do you know how many exactly are going
We
up
have
right now?
6 projects, a total of 1,800 units currently under construction or in some form of development right now.
All right. So why all of a sudden? What's been kind of the impetus for this increase in apartment complexes?
I think a lot of it is just the demand for the diversity in the housing that's within the community. As these units and these projects are coming on board, they are filling up. Talking to the developers, the vacancies are very low. Actually, the one by the mall had the largest waiting list that HSL has ever had for that project. They had over 300 people sign up before even one building was available.
Wow. Wow. So you're talking about the ones at the premium outlets.
Yes.
Now, so here's an interesting point or question or an observation made by at least several of our residents saying, why are we allowing so many of these hideous looking apartments. So why, Jason, are you allowing these hideous apartments in our community?
Well, it's based upon the zoning and many of the different developments that are there. A lot of these areas of our community are covered in specific plans, and the specific plan or the zoning designation allows for a limited number of uses to go into each portion of the development. And then use the mall property as an opportunity there. As part of that development, they allowed for multifamily housing or apartments to be included as part of the overall commercial zoning in there. So it could have been a commercial development or business that went in there, or it could have been multifamily. So it's not up to the town to decide which use is ultimately there. It's up to the developer who is responsible for selling and developing the property to determine what fits within the approved zoning district that was there.
Okay, so let's jump over to Jane here, because I find it hard to believe that the town can't do more to keep these hideous apartments from coming into our community. Jane, what say ye?
Well, I mean, Jason described the zoning appropriately, but the issue, I think some of the questions that we've gotten is, can't you undo it? Could you undo the zoning that allowed them to go there in the first place? And the answer is technically, legally, you could, but we're going to get sued if we do that. There's something in Arizona called the Private Property Rights Protection Act, which was voted on by the voters back in 2006 and approved by a wide margin that gives property owners property rights. It protects the value of their land, and specifically that property owners are entitled to compensation from the government if we do anything that diminishes the value of their property. So if we went in and said, well, we're going to change that zoning so you can't have apartments there, we would get sued and we would lose, and we would have to pay the property owner. So there's not a whole lot we can do once the zoning has been approved already.
So it sounds like there's no question in your mind that we would get sued.
Right.
And no question in your mind that we would lose.
Yes, if we're zoning something, what you would call down zoning, where we're saying you can do less with that property than what you originally had as far as your zoning entitlements go. We're going to take that away from you and you can do less. We're going to lose that every time.
That seems pretty obvious. So what is the advice we give to these residents who are so passionately upset about all of the apartments going into our community? What's kind of the message for them? We just say, tough luck? I mean, too bad, so sad? I mean, what's kind of the, what do we tell them, I guess?
Well, I think, Terry, going back to an earlier podcast that you and I had done, probably one of the first ones that we had done, what I find is that most people will do more research buying a car than they will buying a home. And if people will come in and research, the property that's around them and what is, either zoned or allowed to go in or planned to go into that area, all of that information, no matter what community you're in, is available at your city hall, your town hall, your county courthouse, to go in there and research the property, talk with staff and figure stuff out. A lot of people, we hear, views and things of that nature. You're taking away my views. Well, if you want to preserve your view, the only way to do that is to own the property that's adjacent to you. Don't move in next to a vacant field and presume that it's always going to be a vacant field. More than likely, if you're on the edge of the community, it's going to be developed.
So what do you tell people who say, well, my real estate agent said that land was going to be used for X, and now you're using it for Y?
I still say, go into the municipality and do the research. I've purchased many homes and had realtors tell me one thing, and just knowing my profession and where to go for information, I don't question them or argue with them over it. I just do my own homework and don't put it in somebody else to provide the information to me.
Boy, I think that is outstanding advice for all of our listeners. And I think your point is so well made. And you have made this point a couple of times, actually, on this show prior to this show here today. And that is the amount of time that people put into purchasing a car or some other thing, right? Mm-hmm. A new stereo system or something. They go online, they do their research, but they'll take the word of anybody they'll talk to the neighbors. Oh, what's going behind here? And the neighbors will tell them, well, X is going behind here. And the realtor will tell them X is going behind here. And so they take that as the gospel. And actually, I mean, do you mind, Jason, if people come or call and say, hey, I'm thinking about buying this house. There's a lot next door to it. What could they possibly put on that lot? Would that be something that would annoy you, irritate you?
No, absolutely not. We love when those questions come up when people come in. We actually had a resident last week that came in that was looking to move into the community from somewhere else in southern Arizona, but moving here and wanted to do some research and understand the property and, even look back. Was there any code violations, any building inspection issues, any things like that? So we will gladly take the time to walk through the property file and also go through all the plans and everything with the property owner or an individual, understanding that this is one of their largest, if not the largest investment they're going to make in their life.
Bingo. Great advice. Jane, one of the questions that's come up on these recent influx of questions that came from the residents deals with the number of stories of a building. And can the town do more to limit the height of these buildings? Instead of 3-story, two-story apartments, what do you say to that?
Well, Terry, the height is also established through the zoning procedure. Okay. So the specific plans, and as like by the mall is an example that Jason gave earlier, the specific plans will have in them what the height limitations are for various types of land use designation. So that's already existing as well, same as what types of uses are allowed, the heights are designated in the specific plan. If a property is not a part of a specific plan, then the town's zoning code applies. And again, we have height limitations in there for commercial, for industrial, for residential, different densities of residential. So that's how that is established. But it can't, if it's established by the specific plan, that's another area where the town can't unilaterally go in and change that without looking at the potential for some sort of lawsuit.
Very good. So it seems like this is a very legal thing. I mean, there's a lot of guardrails put in place when it comes to people's property and their rights relative to their property. Is that a safe statement?
Yes, it is. And in particular in Arizona, that's something that the Arizona legislature and the voters have taken very seriously.
Okay. So this is a point, Jason, that you've made multiple times and I think it goes to exactly what Jane was just talking about, height requirements. Mm-hmm. Because 3 stories versus 1 story. 1 story, if it's a Costco, could be, higher than a 3-story apartment complex, right? Yeah. So how does that kind of work? I mean, is it based on stories? Is it based on the height of one single? I mean, how does all that play in? Yeah,
you know me, I don't like talking about stories, but
you like telling stories. Though.
For that reason, it's like you said, a Costco is a single-story building, but it's 30 feet tall, whereas a single-story residential home is anywhere from probably 18 to 20 feet tall. So in the zoning codes, in the specific plans, they will talk just straight, maximum height of a building. 20 feet, 35 feet, 40 feet, 50 feet, whatever it is. It doesn't talk stories. So it just sets a maximum height. But in general, when we do go and establish those heights, especially in a specific plan, mayor and council or planning commission will say, well, what does 35 feet look like? Well, it's, a 2-story residential development, or it's a, 3-story, tight commercial office building, something like that. So we stick with straight, maximum height by feet and not saying 1, 2, or 3-story buildings.
Very good. So understanding that the old adage, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, is, I believe, a true adage. But according to some of the folks that have written in, they're looking at these apartment complexes and they're calling them hideous, trashy, and ugly, just to name a few. Just to name a few of the adjectives that have been utilized for the apartments. Now, I mean, I've driven around, I've looked at them all, and my opinion would, and my mileage would vary greatly from these folks. But, what do you say to that? Now, I'll start over here with Jane, because the appearance of our community is very important to us. And we certainly don't want our residents thinking that we're allowing trash to be built. But what do you say to that?
Well, I feel like a broken record because, again, design guidelines are established in the zoning, either through the specific plan that's adopted, or we also have design guidelines in our land use code. We also, for a certain segment of the community along Silver Bell Road, we have the Silver Bell Road corridor overlay, if I can say that 3 times fast, which has additional design requirements. And so what we're trying to do is have a design that is not hideous and that complements each other and works well within the community, is integrated well within the desert community. So that's the intent. Of course, as you said, beauty's in the eye of the beholder, and sometimes things don't turn out looking the way that we thought they would. But we do have all of those guidelines in place through the zoning, either in the specific plan or in the zoning code.
Yeah. Any additional thoughts from you on that, Jason?
No.
As far as the appearance of the facilities?
No, we, like Jane said, a lot of it's covered in the specific plans or zoning. So our staff in doing the reviews is making sure that every structure within the zoning category is meeting the design requirements as part of it.
Celebrate our nation's birthday at the largest 4th of July event in Southern Arizona. Enjoy live music, a large selection of food trucks, and the best fireworks show in the region. We'll see you on Tuesday, July 4th from 5 to 9:30 p.m. at Crossroads at Silver Bell District Park. Visit maranaaz.gov/events for more information.
Calling all kids ages 5 to 12. Get ready to move and groove at PE Camp. Play traditional sports like kickball and baseball, and PE favorites like dodgeball and parachute. Fill your summer with fun, fitness, and friendship. Register for PE Camp today at maranaaz.gov/recreation.
The town of Marana is dedicated to providing 5-star service for all residents, both 2- and 4-legged. Download the Marana Pets app to report a lost pet or upload a photo of a found pet. Start reuniting families today.
I'm not going to ask either one of you for a personal opinion about the appearance of any one particular apartment complex over another. But like I said, I've driven through the community. I actually think they're very nice as far as apartment complexes go. And I don't know if you can speak at all to what it costs somebody, because people say, "Oh, it's going to bring residents who bring crime and all this other kind of stuff." People aren't paying $200 a month for an apartment here. No. I mean, it's not inexpensive.
No, you're exactly right. A lot of our apartments, the market rate ones, are going for $1,800 a month for a 2-bedroom. The Safford ones, the one that's over on Silver Bell, these are considered affordable, but the lowest rate is for a 2-bedroom, and it's $1,200 a month.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up, because that is one of the questions that's been brought up, I'm assuming, by people that live right in that area who are upset that, quote-unquote, low-income housing is going in their neighborhood. Yep. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, that's what the project is. It's approved that way. The town, and Jane could probably add on to this as well, we do not determine whether it has to be market rate or affordable housing that goes in. That is left up to the developer to decide whether or not they want to pursue a federally funded program for housing assistance. And then they have to meet those criteria established by HUD through the federal government in order to get the assistance for that project. But I mean, a lot of these projects that are going in from an affordable rate, we've talked about it internally, the rates, they have to meet income levels in order to qualify to be within that project. But as part of that, a lot of those are like your young professionals that are coming into the community, students that have recently graduated college or are just entering the workforce. that are looking for a place to live, or it might even be an elderly couple that is on a fixed income that is an empty nester and doesn't want to reside in their home anymore and moves into an apartment project. Great points, Jason. And on the same lines, sticking with the issue of affordable housing, what had to be done, Jane, in order for this developer, this landowner, to build affordable apartments, quote unquote affordable? $1,200 a month. That's like $500 more than my first house payment. But so affordable housing, what had to be done by the town? Did it go to council to be approved to put affordable housing? What was kind of the process that had to fall into place in order for that to happen?
In short, the council doesn't approve whether that's affordable housing subsidized by the federal government or whether that is market rate. The council in 2006 approved the zoning for this particular area where the Safford apartments are that allows multifamily development. So that is the extent of the council's involvement. That's the last time that the council has done anything significant with the zoning. That was a request from the property owner at the time in 2006. The determination of whether this is going to be subsidized or market rate, as Jason mentioned, the developer decides if they're going to apply to the federal government for that. And I think just in today's environment, that's something that we're seeing a lot more discussion about is we need more affordable housing. There's been a lot of that talk at the state legislature during this legislative session and last year as well. And so that's probably why, I'm guessing here, making assumptions about why this particular property owner developer decided to go that route.
Very good. And it didn't have to be apartment. The zoning for that particular property, it didn't have to be apartments, correct?
Correct. I think it's a commercial land use designation is what they have for that particular piece of property. So it could have been other types of commercial development, retail. I can't remember there's a long list of permitted uses in that commercial land use designation, but multifamily was one of those permitted uses.
Right. And so let's be clear. If the town had its preference, and I'm speaking now as the town manager, right? Not as the host of Real Talk with the Town, but as the town manager, if the town had its preference, we would prefer that individual would have built something that was commercial with retail in it, because then we benefit from it financially because we get retail sales tax. Building an apartment complex isn't going to bring additional revenue into the town on an ongoing basis. So, if you're talking preference, I think the town would probably err on the side of, hey, more retail is better for us, especially along the main thoroughfares. So, I understand residents being concerned about, hey, why are you putting all of these apartments along Silverbell? But understand, too, it's what the market dictates. It's what the developer wants to do, what the market will bear. All of those things come into place. It's all about market. But I do want to read, this is a really, I think, pretty thoughtful, well thought out question from Connie, 2007. I won't give the rest of it in case people want to send. But Connie here says, what is the current ratio of rental homes versus owned homes in Marana? And so I'm assuming they're talking about not just rental homes, but apartments as well. Has it changed much over the past 10 years? Does Marana have a goal in mind for this ratio? In my opinion, home ownership, which tends to be longer term versus more transient nature, as rentals promotes a stronger sense of community responsibility investment. Can Marana help individuals and families transition to home ownership by zoning for or otherwise specifying a goal of building up some residential areas with townhomes, condos, et cetera, aka inclusionary zoning? So that's a lot. There's like 10 questions in there. I'll let you pick out whatever questions you want to respond to.
First of all, we haven't done the full assessment of the community to figure out what is the percentage of owner versus renter occupied. That is on our target as far as doing a community housing needs assessment and determining owner versus rental property. But, the industry or the national standard is really For a healthy community, you look for a balance of typically 25% rental versus 75% owner occupied in your housing stock. So that's kind of the general range you're looking at. Obviously, metros, I think, are a little higher as far as rental properties versus owner, but that's just based upon the availability that's there. From our standpoint, from a community, we do want to look at diversifying our housing here. As we've talked about internally and even with the council is, in Marana, you basically live in an apartment or a single family home.
That's right.
We would love to see townhomes, row homes, triplexes, a variety of housing to allow for, some people don't want to deal with landscaping and yard maintenance and all that and would have no problem going into a townhome type development where all they have to worry about is the inside of their unit and that's it. So
you've had those conversations with developers. Hey, guys, bring us some diversity of housing. The council, I've heard them say multiple times, bring us some diversity of housing.
Yeah.
But again, who determines that?
Ultimately, it's the developer.
Yeah.
They're the ones making the investment. And so, we can't force them into it. We could do zoning that says, you could only do a zoning that allows for multifamily to go into this area. We'd have to create that, and Jane doesn't want to have to go through and rewrite that whole thing. But, you can do that. But the problem is if they're not going to use that zoning, then it's just kind of wasted. So we try and write a little broader residential zoning categories that allow for detached or attached type products, and put them in different areas that allow for a list of uses. But the other thing I've seen here, and Jane and I have had this conversation, is Arizona's laws that prohibit us from being able to provide any sort of incentive for development. So we're limited in what kind of creative approach we could take to a developer and say, I worked in Wisconsin before I was here. In Wisconsin, we did a housing study and actually got a developer to do townhomes and row homes in our community, something that the council was asking for there as well. But there was an incentive. There was a cash incentive that was attached to it that's ultimately allowed for us to pay down some of the infrastructure costs associated with it. We can't do that here.
Yeah. And Jane will attest to that fact as our legal person in the room. Incentives for development in Arizona, tough going, right?
Yes, the Arizona Constitution has a provision that we refer to as the gift clause, which prohibits governments from spending money or giving money to private individuals or companies for their benefit. And there's been a lot of litigation, especially in the last probably 10 years, maybe 15 years in the state of Arizona. And almost every time the courts have come down saying that municipalities have gone too far in trying to promote business and bring businesses in or bring certain type of development in by giving exemptions from certain fees or things of that nature. So it is tough in Arizona compared to other states. So some of our residents we have a lot of residents that come from other places, and that's kind of a unique situation in Arizona where we are really limited in what we can do in that area.
I hope people are listening to that. I think that explanation that you gave, Jane, was outstanding. And it is, it's not only frustrating for residents, it's frustrating for us.
Right.
There are things, as we talk to developers, there's things that developers want to do, but they're putting their money on the line, and they're like, okay, we're putting some skin in the game. We want the town to put some skin in the game. And as much as the town would perhaps like to put skin into the game in some of these projects to bring about some of these things that would be, we believe, highly beneficial to the community, we can't do it. Because I go to you and I say, Jane, I want to do this. And Jane says, no. Not always. That's not true. Jane always tries to find a way to yes. But there's only certain things we can do within the confines of what Arizona law and Constitution allow.
That's right. The Supreme Court has given some guidance that we really have to have direct benefits from development. So in the past, even in Arizona, there were attempts at development agreements that would say, well, we expect if this development comes in will have higher tax revenues. They'll bring tax revenues to the area. And the Supreme Court has said, no, that's not good enough. That's not a direct benefit. You can only help and incentivize if you're getting something specific, like this development's going to build a road or this development's going to build a parking garage for the town. So it has to be very specific, direct benefits. And the idea that most people have thought of with economic development is it'll bring business, it'll bring tax revenue, it'll bring people
jobs.
to the downtown area. Yeah. Supreme Court in Arizona has said, no, that's not good enough under the gift clause.
Yeah. So one of the questions here is from a resident who said, what can residents do to be more involved in the process? Any thoughts and ideas from either one of you on that?
Well, I think, what Jason said is true earlier. Just you need to do your research in the first place if you're buying and look what the zoning that already exists is there. But in some cases, zoning comes along after you've already bought your house, and there's an application for rezoning. So I think you should be aware of what's going on around you. We do send out notices or require notices to be sent out, but Jason can say the footage, but I can't remember. It's not a huge area where the notices are sent out, but properties are posted with signs. I'm sure people have seen that for a rezoning, and we all kind of just drive by and don't pay attention. But if there's something like that in your neighborhood, pay attention to it. If you see that kind of a big sign that says Town of Marana rezoning application.
Public meeting.
Right. Yeah. Pay attention to that and get online and try to find when that public hearing is going to be held. And the commission and the council want to hear from residents when they're considering items like this.
Yeah, so the notice requirement is 300 feet. So Jane's right, it's not that far. But we do put signage, we do post in the newspaper. You can also go to the website and sign up for public notifications for any of our meetings that are posted or public hearing notices that are posted. They'll be sent to you through your email that way. But like Jane said, when you get a notice or when you see something in your neighborhood that is being rezoned, it's another opportunity. We always welcome it. Come in, sit down, talk with a planner, go through the project, understand what the request is. And a lot of the developers, we require them to do neighborhood meetings too. So they'll, do a meeting in person or nowadays sometimes they do Zooms or Teams meetings. And they gather all the feedback, ask questions of the developer. What are they truly trying to do here? They're not bad people. They get a bad label for what they do, but they're not bad people, and they will sit down and talk through and show you everything that they have. And, then come with staff and talk through things, educating yourself and understanding what the request is before you go into a public meeting and talk before Plan Commission and Council is always the best. And it's the way for, to gain a lot of respect from those individuals, because when you start throwing out accusations and false statements and things like that, in general, people just tune you out, right? If you're making up stuff. So take the time, research, sit down with people that are involved to get the best understanding you can. That'll help you to, one, either become more comfortable with the project or to be able to speak to key points as to why you do or do not like this particular project.
Excellent. Well, I think we've covered this pretty well, and I really appreciate both of you being here in the studio and talking a little bit about a concern that is obviously on the minds of a number of our residents, and hopefully this is able to assuage some of their concerns, but if not, feel free to send more questions, and we'll do our best to answer them. But Jason or Jane, anything additional that you'd like to add or convey to our listeners before we close things out?
No, I'm good.
You're good. Jane?
Nope, I don't have anything.
You're already looking forward to Iceland, aren't you?
Right, yeah. I'm there.
All right. Well, thank you so much for listening. Continue to send in your questions. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time. Submit your questions by visiting maranaaz.gov/realtalk, and we'll answer them right here. To receive notifications for new releases, remember to click subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Also, please follow the town on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay up to date on current news and events.